Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Podio Commentary. My name is Matt Jarbo. I'll be your host through this discussion of probably the most controversial film of 2024, potentially even 2025, and one that could, in my opinion, fundamentally destroy how the public perceives the Academy Awards for at least the next 15 to 20 years. Yeah, this movie is it is that kind of film. And here's the thing. It's not even a good movie. It's an okay film. I'm just going to kind of lead with that. It's like an okay movie that is, to quote the Family Guy joke going around right now, it kind of insists upon itself a bit too much. This movie is wildly pretentious in the lengths that it goes to try and be, I guess you could say, like a film that is somewhat representative of not only the trans experience, but also the Hispanic experience living in Mexico City. It's a crazy movie that you would not expect an American director to make, and that's because an American director didn't make it. So obviously, for this particular episode, we are going to be going into spoilers. We'll be going into the history of the film from what I can find on Wikipedia. Believe me, it's not much. It's not like you need to know that. We'll talk about the movie itself. I do want to say that I have the mantra of there are no bad films. I've said this multiple times. I try to stand by this. I really do. I really don't ever want to think a movie is truly bad that is made with good intentions. I am having trouble finding the good intentions of this particular movie. And that is something that we need to talk about here. So let's just dive into to today's episode on Emilia Pérez, the number one movie you're going to hear everyone talking about. And you may not have actually seen it, but it is on Netflix. You can go check it out and then come back and watch this. But anyway, the movie was written and directed, and I'm going to butcher this name, by Jacques Audiard. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Now, this is not an original story from him. This is actually a bit of an adaptation. There was a book that came out a couple years ago from a French author named Boris Razon, and it's called Écoute. I'm probably mispronouncing that. The novel has been published in French, not adapted to English, and it explores themes like identity surveillance and the complexities of modern communication. Now, if you're asking yourself what this has to do with the story of a transgender cartel leader who decides to transition into a woman, abandon their family, and then come back into the picture 4 years later as their aunt in what can only be described as Scarface, or what if Scarface became Mrs. Doubtfire. There's actually a chapter apparently in this novel that introduces a transgender Mexican drug dealer that is seeking gender-affirming surgery. And that, of course, is the narrative that led to Jacques' film Emilia Pérez. Now, again, I can't find any real information on this. It doesn't exist in the English-speaking world, which is kind of weird considering how popular or infamous this movie has become in the recent weeks. You figure there would be an immediate translation effort happening, and there'd be a lot more commentary on this book simply because people would be interested to go down the Emilia Pérez rabbit hole and to see what its origins were. But apparently, that's not the case. Now, if you are wondering who Jacques Audiard, who he is, my last name is Jarbo, which is it's French, and yet I cannot speak French to save my damn life. Now, he is a 72-year-old French film director. Just again, to give you an idea about the kind of pretentious asshole that would make a movie like this. Homie's in his 70s. Okay, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Let's just be fair on that one there. All right, so over the course of his career, he has received numerous accolades, including 2 British Film Awards, 3 Golden Globes, 10 Caesar Awards, and 4 prizes from the Cannes Film Festival, as well as nominations for 4 Academy Awards. One thing I should point out, though, is that this movie, again, to say that it insists upon itself, usually in the trailer for movies, you will see the accolades that have been thrust upon it. This movie opens with the accolades that have been thrust upon it, to give you an idea. So you're watching it and you're like, oh, okay, like this is going to be an interesting movie. Like, oh, it won Cannes. Okay. Cool. The average moviegoer does not care. This movie is for wine drinkers that think that other wine drinkers are pretentious, but still want to be like them. That's essentially what this movie is. And so this guy has made a lot of French films. He's written a lot of movies. He's been active since 1974. His first English language movie was in 2018, and that was The Sisters Brothers, which is another adaptation of a novel, and it stars John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix. And that one, again, was kind of a bomb, right? Didn't do very well financially, but still, it is, it is what it is. Back in late 2021 and early 2022, Audiard developed the screenplay from what was going to originally be a 4-act operetta libretto. And again, the title character was inspired from the chapter from that book, Écoute. And this is the first time that Jacques Audiard had even written a movie on his own. He'd written other movies, but he'd always had a writing partner, someone to kind of rein him in, someone to kind of, make sure that he's staying on the pathway, that he's staying true to the cause. This time around, this guy worked on his own. Okay. But his previous co-writer did serve as a creative collaborator. Maybe he could have done more. Maybe he could have been like, "Hey, bro, can you Google what life is like in Mexico City? Can you Google what the trans experience is? I don't know. Maybe you could call somebody. How about that? A lot of people to talk to about this to get a better idea for how to tell a story like this. But nope, he didn't do that, and so wrote the script. But again, this guy's got the clout. He's got the sway, at this particular point in time to get the project like this off the ground. And so we did. And so it originally went into production in autumn of 2022, but then it was delayed 6 months due to different scheduling conflicts with the cast members. I'm assuming probably Zoe Saldana, who is wildly in demand. I mean, then again, she did win the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress, even though she is technically the lead character of this movie for the first 40 minutes. Yeah. The first 40 minutes, it's all about her, and then the next hour and a half, it's all about Emilia Pérez. Movies that switch their character perspectives roughly halfway through is a very bold choice, and one that I'll get ahead of myself here. It works for the story. The movie's called Emilia Pérez. Okay, it's not going to be about Rita, the lawyer. It is one of those things. So anyway. The movie was originally going to be set to take place on location in Mexico, but then the French director decided, nah, I don't want to do that, and moved everything to sound stages in Paris. So they shot the movie on sound stages in Paris, which does make sense considering this was meant to be kind of based like an opera libretto, right? So you could kind of see like he wants to kind of stick with very, I guess, singular locations to tell the story, which makes sense. The interior scenes included a reconstruction of what they determined a authentic Mexican backdrop. And Jacques stated that the studio setting would afford him the ability to produce more form and give him more freedom for the parts that are sung and choreographed, which, look, I agree. If you're going to go for something that is effectively a stage production that is being adapted into a feature film, it does make the most amount of sense to approach it from that perspective. Completely agree. And I know the songs, and believe me, the songs are not good. And the choreography has been getting a lot of crap as well. The choreography in my mind is not terrible. It is something that comes across a little bit like a forced high school production of a musical. Like it doesn't fit. Like, this is the whole thing. It's kind of like I said this about Wicked. I haven't done a Podio on Wicked, but I need to. Wicked is an excellent story that would be made only better if you got rid of the music. Not to say that the songs were bad. I quite enjoyed them, but they stopped the story in their tracks. They're great for plays when you're doing a musical because the limited scope of what you have to work with on the stage. I get all that. In a movie, it's totally different, and you should not do it. And that's just me. Or limit the amount of songs. How about that? Wicked and this one both have an insane amount of songs that do not need to be there. Ultimately, the film did begin principal photography in May 2022, and then it wrapped in July of 2023. And there you go. They wanted to have a movie that was set about a transgendered cartel kingpin who transitions to live life as a female. And they had the main actress, Karla Sofía Gascón, who I will fully say was good. None of the acting in my mind was bad in this movie. I don't think the acting was the real big problem. Well, Selena Gomez, yeah, that was a problem. But Zoe Saldana and Karla Sofía Gascón, they did a good job. Okay, I'm not gonna deny any of that. I think they did fine. Albeit they didn't have a lot of good stuff to work with, but what they did well. But Gascon wished to portray Emilia Pérez as both the pre-surgery and post-surgery stages. So pre-op, post-op. And the problem though is when you know that information, it does seem like, Gascon is doing, you know what I mean? It's kind of like it's hard to not see it when you're watching the movie. But if you don't know, then it's like, okay, then I think they could probably do it there. It was like the problem with Gascon portraying the drug dealer Minis. I think it's Minis or what is it? It's Menitas. Sorry, Menitas. Is that she's trying to lower her voice to a growl and speak with intent, and also meant to be kind of threatening and meant to be forceful. But at the same time, trying to be masculine while trying to hide the femininity. It's a very weird performance. And you don't ever see them do anything that is considered what you think a drug kingpin would do. Everything is told kind of off screen, like you see it in news reports and whatnot. And that to me is kind of the weirdest thing. So we're meant to see, and I think they did that on purpose. So I think they're doing that because they want us to empathize with Emilia Pérez. They want us to not see, Menitas as the villain, even though we know that Menitas is the villain. That as Menitas, they have killed multiple hundreds of people and done horrible, terrible things to buy politicians, to buy elections, to destroy other cartel members, to completely, demolish their enemies. And then we're meant to sympathize with the person who just wants to get away from it all and just wants to change who they are. And that is where it becomes something that I think the trans community is kind of like, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? I don't know. Oh my God. Now the movie itself did premiere at the Cannes Film Festival in 2024. Where it did receive a standing ovation, which I love this because this is written in the Wikipedia and you'll see headlines about this all the time. Fun fact about this, for those of you who don't know, if you go to Cannes and you have a movie at Cannes, you're always going to have a standing ovation at the end of the movie, right? And it's going to be a long standing ovation because they normally do it for the length of the end credits. It really doesn't mean anything. However, it is what it is. Now, shortly after its premiere, Netflix beat out multiple other studios that were in negotiations to acquire the distribution rights in North America and the UK, and they got it for $12 million. I mean, that's not a bad deal to start with that. But they ultimately, were able to close it for about $8 million. And then from there, it did premiere and did quite well. It's quite well, even though it went to theaters, it didn't really do as good as it could have done in theaters. I think it only made $10 million. But of course it premiered in the United States and Canada on November 1st in order to qualify for the Oscars and to qualify for award seasons. And then on November 13th, it went to Netflix. And I'll tell you this right now, the Oscars came out the other day. The Oscars gave it 13 awards. When I went to Netflix last night to watch it, it was not even in the top 10 of films being watched, which tells me that it means nothing. The Oscars mean nothing to the average film goer because this is a movie that's up for 13. That's a high number. It kind of swept the Golden Globes. It's looking to sweep the Oscars. And I have a whole video about why that's probably going to be done simply because of the optics of Hollywood, and they can never be seen as anything other than the most horrifically progressive. And I say this as a progressive. It's so weird. It's a whole politics thing. I don't want to dive into it. But, even though critics dug the movie, as they would, because again, critics don't want to be seen as being wrong, right? That's the other part of it too. When it comes to these hot topic issues, the movie came out right before the presidential election, which we knew that transgender rights and immigration were going to be heavily on the docket. Trump wins the election. He's now president. And the movie is getting all of these awards recognitions for something it definitely does not deserve, in my opinion. And one can't help but ponder, is this something that's being done because they feel that it is the most generous to the optics? And I can understand the reason why, but it's just, it leads into the whole argument about how Hollywood is not even remotely based on merit. It's based on who you know and the political optics of the time. And again, looking back, Crash won Best Picture in 2006, and people go back and they trash Crash constantly. Movies that win Best Picture are not technically the best picture anymore, just to give you an idea. But Hollywood and the critics really seemed to flock to this. And then when the general public got their hands on it, the response is, I don't know. I mean, James Cameron dug it, called it bold and daring. Emily Blunt called it a singular experience, right? Meryl Streep called it beautiful, smudged, sensual, incredible. Guillermo del Toro remarked, "It's so beautiful to see a movie that is cinema." Michael Mann called it a contemporary masterpiece. And there's been all of these other high-profile Hollywood directors and actors coming out and just praising this movie, which is so weird because when you watch it, it's got an interesting story and there's some good performances, but it is also, every time it gets good, it shoots itself in the foot. Going back to that whole, it insists upon itself narrative. You have the LGBTQ community coming out and criticizing it for how it portrays the trans experience. You've got, people in Mexico coming out criticizing the movie for how it portrays life in Mexico. I mean, it is it's up for all these awards. And it's I just feel like when we talk about Hollywood not being, not having its finger on the pulse of where things are, this movie comes, it just comes right down to it and says it. It's just, this is the most blatant example of that we've seen in quite some time, which is one of the reasons why it's so damn funny. And it starts off by showing us the life of Rita Mora Castro, played by Zoe Saldana, who is a lawyer who is very underappreciated. She doesn't like her job. She's helping get this mogul off with murder, claiming that his wife committed suicide. And as soon as they end up, winning that case, which she already feels kind of bad about, that she gets a phone call from Manitas, basically saying hey, come work for me. I'll make you a lot. I'll make you a lot of money. You'll get a lot of money. You'll get rich. So she takes on this case and she goes, okay, what do you want? And he goes all right, I want to become a woman and I want to change my whole life. And I'm going to hire you and only you to go and find me the best transition doctor around the world where I can then do all of this and I can get away from it all. And I'm going to give you millions of dollars and you're going to be able to live your life. And she's on it because she complained about having a fat ass or something. It was weird. There's a whole song where she complains about her butt is one of the pieces of the song. I mean, obviously she's complaining about her life in general, but she's alone, single, no kids, no boyfriend, fat ass. It's okay. I mean, I get it. We've all been there, right? So she goes and she starts looking this up. And this is where you've probably seen the clip floating around if you haven't seen the movie about she goes to this transgender clinic, the sexual reassignment clinic in Bangkok. And there's a song there about vaginoplastia. And it's just it's the stupidest. It's there's a 15-second clip that made its way around. And that was bad enough. And then I watched the whole thing in context and it wasn't any better. In fact, it was even worse. I was oh my God, no. Because it's just, what is this song? It's this weird, forced song about going and getting sexual reassignment surgery and how much it costs and things along those lines. It's so weird. And again, she even asks about what it would cost to get a butt lift. or whatever to get her butt taken care of. And they're like $4,500. And she's like, yay. Right. And then she gets back from there. And then she ends up being like assaulted by cartel members again because she's not working fast enough. And then she goes to Tel Aviv and she finds this doctor. Now, I do want to say, I do want to say one positive thing. There's this song with the doctor, in Tel Aviv. And he's talking about how like changing your body doesn't change your mentality, right? Like you can change the outside, but you can never change what's on the inside. Which is an interesting way of talking about it, because it will pop up with people who've like talked about transgender surgery and everything else, sexual reassignment surgery. Like you can change the outside, but you can't change the inside. But then there's a line that she says about how, changing your soul, like can change society, and changing society can change us all, sort of thing. And I thought that was interesting, where it's like your outlook. If you change your outlook, that might be able to change society around you. And if you can change society around you, then you can change us all. And that is a general theme for the last half of the movie, which I'll grant. And I did enjoy that quite a bit. I thought that was good introspection, for the audience to be like, maybe, we can change who we are. But it's also kind of short-lived, simply because this is in the context of a person who has dealt drugs, committed mass murder, done all these terrible, horrible things. And all of a sudden, like, they're going to transition, and that's now going to make them a better person. You know what I mean? Right? Because like the part of that conversation is like the doctor going like, well, how long has this person been on hormone therapy? Oh, they've been on there for 2 years. Okay. But he's like, that's not like how psychiatry works, sort of thing. And right. They really skip over it, even though the messaging I think is on point. I get the messaging. I like the messaging in that scene. It kind of loses it. It just, and that is kind of Emilia Pérez in the nutshell, is like, it has an interesting message, but then it just loses itself because it doesn't know how to make the point and then make it stick. And then again, it insists upon itself. But anyway, the doctor agrees, meets Manitas. They do all that. They relocate the family to Switzerland. Now Rita is free. She's got millions of dollars. She can go where she wants, do what she wants. 4 years later, she's in London. And then Manitas, now Emilia Pérez, tracks her down and says, I need you to bring my family back from Switzerland, back to Mexico City. By the way, all, the cartel people, like, they all think Manitas is dead, but if they knew Manitas was alive, they would kill Manitas. But they don't know Emilia Pérez. And so then Zoe Saldana, Rita's like, all right, fine, we'll take him back. So they get the family back. And Selena Gomez, at this point, this is when her character arc kind of kicks in again. We're like halfway into the movie. Now we've switched perspectives from Rita back to Emilia. And then Emilia, is playing the Aunt Emmy to the two boys that are like her biological children, but they don't know it. Again, this is where Scarface becomes Mrs. Doubtfire. And then through this, obviously, Manitas cannot have or Emilia cannot have a relationship with Jessica, Selena Gomez's character. And so Selena Gomez's character is like in love with this dude named Gustavo, with whom she had an affair when she was with Manitas, tells this to Emilia. And Emilia is not even like really, is kind of mad, but like not really mad, like can't get mad, sort of thing. But in the process of all of that going on, Emilia and Rita are having lunch, and this woman comes by and she's like, hey, my son went missing, like 10 years ago, 11 years ago. If you've seen him, please let me know. And this is where all of a sudden Emilia gets a change of heart and goes and finds out where the guy's buried to give the mom closure. And then she goes, this is the first time I've ever loved myself. Right. And now we start to whitewash all the other craziness, because she creates an NGO in order to start to find where the bodies are buried. Right. Knows a bunch of sicarios that want to do good, gets them to tell where all the bodies are buried, but they don't also prosecute anybody. It's not about prosecution. It's not about getting confessions to be able to bring in police investigation. It's about just finding the bodies, until there's a whole scene about how they're upset that there's no police investigations into finding the bodies. Kind of weird, right? And then but it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. And this is where it's kind of like, You know the movie The Help, right? It feels like a bit of whitewashing, to be honest with you. It's like, oh, I caused a lot of these problems. I'm just going to come back in and I'm going to fix them, but I ain't going to tell anybody. And I can't bring back the dead people and I can't give financial compensation, but I am going to find the bodies to give people the closure that they need. But I mean, but granted, as far as my very gringo-esque understanding of Hispanic culture goes, I think like the way that they view death is different than the way we view death. So it's like obviously having that closure is greater than anything else that's available, 100%. But it's here where Emilia meets a woman, Epifania, whose husband beat her and raped her and stole from her. And, you know, when the body is found, Epifania goes in there like basically thinking her husband's alive and that she's gonna knife him. And then from there, all of a sudden, like they form a relationship and they kind of hook up. I'm like, okay, cool. Everyone needs love. And then also Jessica is with Gustavo. And then Jessica's like, I'm going to get married and I'm going to leave and take the kids. And this is where, you know, Emilia's like, you know, this is where Manitas comes out. And Jessica leaves with the kid, you know, and then Emilia has her driver beat the crap out of Gustavo, give him $100,000 to get the hell out of the city, never come back. Gustavo apparently is a bad guy. He's apparently a bad boy. He's apparently got a crew. We don't know anything about him. Edgar Ramirez plays him. We don't know anything about him. Literally 100%. We know nothing about this guy. And so then the climax of the movie is they kidnap Emilia, cut off 3 of her fingers. And then Rita goes and gets some cartel members, apparently. Don't know where they come from. And they all go and rescue, you know, Emilia. And then there's like this shootout at the location. And then this is where you've got, you know, Emilia confesses to Jess that she's Manitas. And then, you know, they grab, Gustavo gets out of there, grabs Emilia, throws her in the trunk of a car, and then they drive off. And then Jess is where it gets so stupid. Jess like grabs the gun and she's like, it's Manitas, it's my husband, he's in the trunk. And Gustavo's like, what are you talking about? She pulls the gun. He's like, what are you doing? And they race and you know, they're fighting over the gun. Gunshots going off, and they drive off a cliff and they tumble the car. And I'm like, there's no way they're alive. And then the car just explodes and all of them are dead. Like it's a Shakespearean effing tragedy. Because that's what they wanted. That's what they wanted at the end of this, right? That there's no, you know, whatever. And then after that, Rita confronts the children, tells the children kind of what happened, says she's going to raise them now. And then the last shot of the movie is the city. And they basically turned Emilia Pérez into Saint Emilia. And they have an effigy of her, and they're walking through the streets, and they're singing a song about her, and that's where the movie ends. And it's like, so freaking pretentious, the ending of the film. It's so dumb. It feels like the director watched Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet from the 90s and went like, I kind of want an ending like that. I don't know why. That's the vibe I got from this movie. Not the worst thing I've ever seen. Not the best thing I've ever seen by a long shot. Am I upset that I watched it? No. Is it worth a watch? I don't know. Maybe if that's something you're kind of into, if you want to subject yourself to this kind of story that is going to be interesting, and then it immediately starts to frustrate you because that's just what happens with it. This movie, I don't want it to win the awards. This is not, I don't think, a movie ultimately worth championing in the way that they're trying to champion it. I think that you have an idea here that was half-baked at best and kind of like wildly cultural appropriateness at worst, right? It's kind of what this guy's doing. He doesn't care. Hollywood has heaped praise upon praise upon praise, and all these awards are going to back that up. And that means that there's no notes. That means that whatever people are saying about the movie don't mean anything, that the director, that the producers, that the actors, they're not going to learn from this. And that's just, you know, part of Hollywood, right? So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is a movie that exists at this time, and it exists in this situation largely due to the politics outside of its control that were not even taken into account when it was originally conceived. And it just kind of finds itself in that space. Well, the reality of it is that we should not reward it for coincidence. And I think that's the key takeaway here. It is a movie that if they released a version that cut out the songs, like most of the songs, I think it would be much better. But it's also like you can't really polish a turd. And when the soul of the movie is so designed to just kind of not get it, it makes it difficult to really kind of put this up and say that this is a classic and that this is a really good movie. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. Those are just my opinions on this. I don't quite know what you guys have to say about it. So feel free to let me know down in the comment section. If you're listening to this on YouTube, I really want to know your thoughts. I really want to know your thoughts on this. And if you follow me wherever you get your podcasts, that'd be great. Support Podio Commentary. You can sponsor episodes. Go to patreon.com/Matt Jarbo. I'll watch a movie you want me to watch, and I'll give it my full rundown. And until next time, guys, have yourself a great day. Thank you again, and peace out.